Welcome back to the Sci-fi book project, book layout project. In this tutorial, part 5, we're actually going to go over painting. So you'll see I have opened up my work project here, the folder here that I have, and I have added textures, some lighting and darkening layers, and then I have some color layers. So like for example, originally this wing was gray, and all of a sudden it's now kind of yellowish orange, and that's because I set the blend mode to overlay and paint with that color. So all you gotta do is add a new layer, and it's clipped by the little arrow here. But again, you just have to hold the Alt key between these two layers and click, and you would be able to unclip that or reclip it just by clicking that. Accidentally unclipped a lot of these other layers, looks like. But that's basically how you unclip or reclip, or mouse, I should say. It's a little easier. There we go. Clip, clip, and clip. So to set up a new layer, I'm going to add a new layer here, and I'm going to change this blend mode from normal to overlay. Actually, let's leave it on normal to start off with. And to select a color in here, all I gotta do is hold the Alt key, and then I get the eyedrop tool and click with the paintbrush, and I have that tool selected. And then I can paint across here whatever color I want. Now for my settings, I have transfer set up and shape dynamics, both set to pin pressure. And you'll see my opacity here is kind of low, it's at 30%. I usually like to paint around 70%. So, and that will give me some range there where I could paint the color whatever I want. So right now I'm painting with normal. You can see here what normal is doing. It's sort of just like overlapping everything. But again, if I change the blend mode to overlay, overlay is like the greatest blend mode for blending colors, because you can essentially paint whatever color on top of it, and you can still retain that sort of textural detail of that layer. So now the wings are kind of orange looking, which is kind of cool. So overlay is real easy to do. And again, if you want to switch to, your eraser tool, I have a hotkey set up for that. But you can basically erase back any of that layer. And since it's on its own layer, it's independent, so it's really easy to kind of modify these things and take advantage of that. So let's switch to another layer, and this time we're going to talk about actually adding detail to this image. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and you'll notice that in the ship here there's a lot of basically collage elements, but then I did all this sort of paint over to create sort of a structure. And what I'm doing is I'm just using the areas in the scene here to paint with, just by using the eyedrop tool. So say I want to create this sort of V-bar thing going on here. I can just hold the Alt key and select this color here, and then paint across here, basically. And it looks like, so the reason why I was trying to paint across here, the reason why it's not working is because this layer is clipped. So I have to make sure that if I am going to bring something outside of the area, I want it to be unclipped. So I just dragged it up to unclip it so that I can create a new sort of thing element that's kind of painting across here. And so I can select different colors here and basically kind of reproduce this sort of shadow, light and dark that's happening there, and be kind of bold with it. But again, if you have around 70%, it's not a big deal, to paint with, and you can sort of, add some sort of blotting and sort of like push back and forth with the opacity and just resample different areas. I'm quite often resampling areas and just kind of painting back over it in little areas here. Then I can paint highlights. So on these like beams, I like to add some little bit of highlight. So I'll select a little color here, shrink down my brush, and just paint across here. Create like a little highlight area. That color is not quite right, so I'll undo that a couple of times there. And sometimes you have to select this color here, and then you can click in your color picker and just pick a slightly lighter shade, and sometimes that works too. So I feel like that would be a better highlight. I guess I could pick the orange up here, and that would do it too. So again, the idea here is I'm working sort of the light direction coming from above, so all my shadow colors are going to be towards the bottom of everything. But you can see how quickly it is to kind of blend in little area here. And if we really zoom in here, I mean, it's not going to be, photorealistic in any way. You can kind of see my brush work. But when you zoom out, you're really not noticing it. And when you lay down textures on top of it, that's sort of the key too, is to integrate some textures in there. And then you got the best of both worlds, and you really can fool the eye into feeling everything comes together. There's some magical paintings to check out if you ever get a chance, which are paintings for matte paintings for like the original Star Wars films. They are very impressionistic. If you look at all those old matte paintings on glass, a lot of times they're very, very blotchy and just very impressionistic. Not they represent a lot of detail, but if you look up close, they don't seem to have a lot of detail, which is really interesting. And that's due to the way our eye works. We sort of blend those pixels together from a distance when it's projected, so it kind of works the same way. So you can see in here all this material here, I kind of did the same thing. I just select something here and I'd be like, well, let's create a beam that goes across back here, and just kind of select some color here and connect it with something else. I think this is a really good way to just make something really interesting, and then just select other colors for sample with the Alt key. And I mean, painting is so much faster digitally than traditional, just for this reason, because you can just hold the Alt key and select something, and then not have to worry about it in terms of the paint drying or mixing the paint or anything like that. Even pouring out paint on a tube, it's just, you don't have to worry about it, which is really nice. And then if certain areas are too big or blotchy, like this area here, this highlight's a little big, I could break it up, just by selecting some other color here. Kind of go around and kind of blend it out softly. Same with this area here. I feel like these little highlights are just a little strong. I kind of did it over here too. So sometimes if you blotch it out, you can kind of make it feel like rust. I think adding another layer of texture on there would work really well. Now there are some areas here that I didn't like at all. I think the texture was overlapping or something, so I'm just going to paint over this little bit here. And so sometimes I'll just use it just to touch up areas, which is really cool. If I don't like a logo or something, like I'm not crazy about the white circle here, I could select the yellow here and just kind of paint it out. So you can have a lot of fun kind of just figuring out what areas you don't like, what areas you do like, and just paint it out. It's not so hard to do. And it seems kind of ridiculous to paint here with 70% versus 100 if you're just going to paint over it. But something about like sampling from different colors and having that 70% gives you more of a life. Now you can see all the little bevels, trim and area here. I've kind of integrated it here. I could bring this tail fin color up here. I kind of feel like this whole area needs to be integrated somehow. It's just not integrated enough. So I mean, let your imagination kind of go wild here and just kind of paint it and have fun painting. I mean, painting is really fun. It should be fun anyways. Sometimes it can be frustrating, but again, if you use these strategies of like 70% and using textures to apply, sample a lot from different areas, and then focus on working dark to light, and some illustration techniques of like having these trims. The trim up here, if I add this color here and sort of have like a bevel highlight up here, all of a sudden that looks cooler. If I want to add a division line here, a little bevel line across there, a little shadow underneath it, all of a sudden gives it a separation, and now that's starting to feel like a panel here. Very quick and easy. Maybe I'll have another little circle thing. Circles are real popular in sci-fi. So I could have a little circle area here, maybe like an opening, and then maybe a division line coming from there. So breaking things up with division lines, having little trim areas like that. When you start to zoom back, it's starting to come together. So have fun just kind of exploring the idea of here of like creating your own frame by sampling the different colors and bringing it all together. Again, here's the before and after, so you can really see all these areas, especially in this engine area here. Let me add a new layer here so I can just demo real quick the areas I'm talking about. But like all these areas here, bring this back up to 100%. There we go. All these areas right in here. Pay attention to that area, especially when I turn this on and off. I mean, huge difference in what's going on there. And the other areas, of course, is right here. Big changes in that area there. And if you don't like certain areas, like there were certain areas up in here that I was like, oh, I'm not crazy about this. So, basically just having the ability to paint over it was really nice. So have fun exploring. Again, in the next tutorial, we'll probably show some detailing, and then we'll figure out how to add some other lighting effects in the next tutorial. So until then, see you soon in Adobe Photoshop. Cheers.